Chluhu. You shall eat the Korban Pesach with matzahs and maror. So, Bisman Abeis Hamikdash, when we brought the Korban Pesach, the mitzvah of eating maror was also midoraisa. But today, Bisman Hazeh, where we don't have the Korban Pesach, the mitzvah of maror is drabanan only. Now, our mitzvah of eating matzah is still midoraisa, because it's there, it's also connected. It says, Ba'erev tochlu matzahs. There's another pasuk which doesn't connect it to achilas korban pesach. Now, as you know, there's in the Haggadah, we talk about the Hillel sandwich, where he said you're not makayim the mitzvah unless you do it together. You got to make a sandwich, and you're not makayim the mitzvah of matzah or the korban pesach, because they have to go hand in hand there. But the standalone mitzvah of matzah is from Ba'erev Tochlu Matzahs. And that's why the mitzvah of matzah midoraisa is only the first night of Pesach. It's not even in the daytime of Pesach. It's just Leil HaSeder. And the rest of Pesach, there's no mitzvah saseh to eat it. You can eat matzah because that's the only bread we can eat. And for example, on Shabbos, you need lechem mishneh. You have to have matzah. Al lechem mishneh, not al tzlechiyuv of matzah. Okay, that's just to differentiate between maror and matzah. So which vegetables can you use for maror? So the Mishnah says chazeres, which the Gemara will tell us is lettuce. That's why we use romaine lettuce. Betamcha is horseradish. Uvechachavina, the Gemara will tell us what that is. Uveulshin, the Gemara will tell us what that is. Uvemoror, which is a different type of, it's not, maror is another vegetable, which the Gemara will tell us what it is. And the Mishnah says, ben lach and ben yaveshin. You could be yotze both moist and dry. Avalok kvush, you can't soak it for more than 24 hours. Velo shlukin, you can't cook it for a long period of time until it gets like into, it sort of dissolves. Velo mavusholin, you can't regular cook it. And the reason why you can't do these actions to it, because it takes away the bitterness. Then the Mishnah says, mitzarfin lekazayis. All of these, if you had a half a kazayis of chazeres and a half a kazayis of tamcha, it'll be mitzarf to a kazayis. You could mix and match. The yotzin bekelach shalahen. Your yotz, the kelach is the stalk. That means you don't necessarily have to eat the leaves. You can eat the leaves, but you're also yotzei in the stalks. And then the Mishnah said, which we learned previously, bidmai, right? Which we said, if you bought produce from an am haaretz, it was a suffix whether he gave trumas and maasros from it, so you'd have to separate it again. So if you bought vegetable dmai, and you used it, it would be kosher for maror. Right? If you gave meiser rishon produce to a Levi, he gave truma to the kohen from it, trumas meiser, it's acceptable. And meiser sheni v'hegdish niftu, and meiser sheni v'hegdish, which were appropriately redeemed. Now, we'll ask the same questions that we did before. I mean, l'chora, this is pshita. Why shouldn't we? I mean, we know from this that you can't use tevel. Now, perhaps the Chiddush Rashi tells us, remember, by grain, the Maasros and Trumas are given from produce, like grain, wheat, barley. But yerek, vegetables, the din of Trumas and Maasros are only rabbinic. So if I used tevel d'Rabbanon, for example, let's say I used a vegetable, I didn't give Trumas and Maasros. So it's only tevel d'Rabbanon. So we have to be taught that it's still considered mitzvah haba ba'aveira. It's not acceptable, Rashi says. It's a mitzvah that came through a way of a sin, and the sin was even a rabbinic sin. Even so, that's a big chiddush. Says the Gemara, chazeres chasa. Chasa is a lettuce. Ulshin, endives. Tamcha, Rav Rachana, tmachtashma, which is chrein, which is our horseradish. Charchivna, some kind of vegetable that grew at the base of a palm tree. I don't know if we know what that is. Uva moror, mririsa. Rashi says, a mirapoil, the pufrin, poperin. Again, I don't know if we know exactly what that is. But we do know the first two. We know chasa, romaine lettuce. Most Jews today eat either romaine lettuce or geribene chrein, horseradish, which is the two first ones. And there are many poskim who learn that the order in the Mishnah is in the order of preference, which is why, the yeshivish world. So again, I'd like to hear comments from the other people on the Zoom tonight. When I was growing up, in my family, they ate horseradish. That was the moror.
We also did, yeah.
That was the moror.
It's inedible.
The Lakewood Kolel, I'm saying the more yeshivish element changed the regular minhagim, because you could the Mishnah Brura, the yeshivish world felt chasa was better because of this thing that it's the first one in the Mishnah. But in Europe, people in Poland and Lithuania, is Velvel on the phone?
We ate horseradish.
There you go. See, the Lithuanians, in many ways, they acted like Polish because it was really considered like Upper Poland.
Maybe Polish acted like Lithuanians, but that's
whatever.
The yeshivish world that came afterwards was not really Litvish. They were okay. It's fine.
It could be. So I'm just pointing out that Enechanami, the Elazar Genauer, what did your father use? Did he use horseradish? That was the regular minhag. It's just amazing how in one door it really changed. Because I would say today, I've used romaine lettuce for the last 30 years.
Right.
And they were also concerned that people didn't eat enough of the shear of mara because it was so hard to eat the horseradish that people weren't eating the right shear, and they felt it was easier to eat the shear more if you ate the lettuce. I think that
everybody would cough and cry. You couldn't get past that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I don't think I ever ate the proper shear of horseradish. Absolutely not. The amount of mara that they want us to eat by the romaine lettuce.
Yeah, you couldn't get the kids to eat that today.
Of volume when we ate mara.
You get the kids to eat that today to be the Yotze another year. You never get kids to eat more today.
But my grandmother, and Harold remembers my grandmother, she would get red as a beet. She would eat the mar and she'd get as red as a beet at her age. She was in her high 80s, early 90s, and would always eat the horseradish. Okay. Tony Bar Kapara. Eli Yeraka Sharon Yotze Ben Yidei Chovasu B'Pesach. Be'ulshin, which we said was endives, or the tamcha, which we said was chrein, becharcholin, or becharvinin, or bechazorin. Now, chazorin are the lettuces. Rav Yehuda Omer af ulshei sodeh, even the endives of the field, and ulshei gina, the endives of the garden, and chazeres. Freit Gemara, Ulshe Gina v'chazeres, toleration. We already mentioned those. But says Achi Kamar, Af Ulshe Soda, that even the field endives, Ka'oshe Gina v'chazeres, are like the garden ulshim and the chazeres. Reb Meir Omer Af Asvis Vitura Umar Yeroar, which are other vegetables that Rashi says Mine Yerakos. These are types of vegetables. Rashi also didn't have a specific identification of what these things were. Not even in Old French. Sometimes he had an Old French understanding of what it was, based on what his Rebbeim had told him. And in some, he didn't have a Masorah. He says, Mine Yerakos, right? Some kind of vegetable. Amale Rabbi Yossi, Asvas Vitura Echadu. Asvas and Vitura are the same thing. And Mar Zehu Yeroar. Mar and Yeroar are the same thing. We don't really know what these things are in the first place. Tanit Rabbi Shmuel. The following vegetables can be used for mora: chazeres, which is the lettuce, ulshin, endives, tamcha, chrein, charbinin, uvecharginin, uvahardefoinin. Hardefoinin, Rashi says, alushna. Okay? Yehuda Omer, av chazeres, yoilin, v'chazeres galin kayotzben. The Yulin Chazeres and the Galin Chazeres are kosher as well. And Rabbi Loi or Rabbi Lazar Af are kablim, which Rashi says is atzvasa trizisa, some kind of like a sieve, a thick. Some kind of thick moss of some type.
Ivy. It says
Ivy?
thick ivy.
Okay.
That
I didn't know
around the
ivy
trunk.
I didn't know ivy was a vegetable that you could eat. Okay. The Chazarti al kol tamida v'vikashtu lichaver. I wanted to find somebody who agreed with me. V'lo matzasi. Shabbat lifnei Rav Eliezer ben Yaakov hoidel bar. He agreed to me. Rav Yehuda Omer kol sheyesh lo sraf. Sraf is like a sap. Rashi says when you cut it, some kind of white sap comes out of it. Korin litin, lighten. Rav Yechon ben Broika Omer kol sheponav machsifin means it's green. The leaves are green. So we have two criteria. When you cut it, it's got a white sap, and its leaves are green. Kol yerek mar. Every bitter vegetable, you should know, yesh lo sraf ufanav machsifin. It has the sap and it's green. On Rav Yochanan, midivri kula nilmad, yerek mar yesh lo sraf ufanav machsifin. On Rav Halacha kacher. The halacha is like the cherin that identifies these criteria. So the Shulchan Aruch says, "Yotzin yedei choivas mora bechazeres betamcha." You can be yotzin mora with lettuce, horseradish, v'chol shram, and everything else mentioned in the Mishnah. V'mein lo yikach yerek mar acher. If you don't have these things, get a bitter vegetable. V'skimu poskim achronim shkol shram min yerek ein mevorach al brachas samora. But if it's not lettuce or horseradish, you shouldn't make the bracha. Any vegetable mentioned early in the Mishnah, that's the one you should get most. So since chazeres, which is lettuce, is mentioned first, that's why the minig now is to use lettuce. The yotzim baleim, I'm still reading the Shulchan Aruch. We're yotzim with the leaves, with the klachayim, and with the stalks, avalot, but not with the root. The yotzim ba'alim alachim, they have to be moist. Uveklach, and by the stalks, gamim yavish, even if they're dry. But you can't use cooked ones or soaked ones. And then the Shulchan Aruch says, mitzvah lechazer achrei chazeres. The mitzvah smora korban b'gemara. You should run after lettuce. Uvaharbe makilos Europa. So in the European communities, kiven shlohaisa chazeres mitzuy b'neim. They didn't have lettuce. V'hayu bo tolaim ktanim, and there were worms. Hayu madifim lotzeis b'chrein. That's why in Europe they used horseradish. V'yeshen nogu al derech hasod. Let's say it's choiv more b'shneim, and Kabbalistic reasons to use both. We also put put chrein on our romaine lettuce. That means we have some of the regular chrein, and you put it on the romaine lettuce. Some people like the flavor of the horseradish. That's how we do it as well. Here, I didn't know it. Shulchan Aruch says some kind of sod to use a combination of the two. Okay. Ravina found Ravacha looking for Mrirta. Amalei my daita. The Mirin Tvei? What do you think? Mirin is the best, but Chazeres none. Our Mishnah says Chazeres is the key one. V'tanit Vei Shmuel Chazeres. V'amar Rabbi Shem Yitzhak Chazeres. My chazeres chasa. Chasa is lettuce. My chasa, the chas Rachmani line, because Rachmani had pity on us. Why were the Egyptians like more? This kind of vegetables are soft early, and they're hard later. Initially, they paid us for our work. Then they made us slaves. Amarle Hadribi. So the one who says, I looked for Mrirta, he says, I went back, I look for Chasa now. Amarle Rav Rechumi Labaya. So first of all, how do we know mora means bitter? How do we know it's a vegetable? Maybe it's like a gallbladder of a fish, like bitter vigal, right? Maybe it wasn't a vegetable. So the Gemara says, no, dumi the matzah. It says, al matzah sumrori. So we connect more to matzah. Ma matzah gidu like karka, just like matzah grows from the ground. Af mora gidu like karka. So that's why we know it's not an animal. The Amar here doof. Rashi says the hirduf tree was a tree that Moshe Rabbeinu used to sweeten the waters in Mara. Right? Because it was a nes b'toch nes. The hirduf was a bitter stick. He put it in bitter water, yet it turned sweet. So maybe Mara is hirduf. But l'chora hirduf is not an edible thing. So we say domi de matzah. Ma matzah means zroim. Right? Matzah grows from seeds. Wheat came from seeds. Af mora means zroim. And the hirduf is an eitz, not a zera. I the emahar zipu, which is a type of seed, and it's poisonous to animals. But it's not a pre-michel. It's not normally eaten. They don't even feed it to animals. And we need it to be an oichel. We'll see why. So domi de matzah, ma matzah sheni kechas bekesef meiser, right? When you come up with meiser sheni money in Yerushalayim, you have to be able to buy food with it. You can't buy what you want with it. You can't buy a saddle. It has to be edible. So af mora sheni kech bekesef meiser. So more has to be something that's edible. So it's a vegetable. Maybe what's all these various species? Maybe it's only one of them. So the word says no. Mrorim seed. Mrorim is plural. I am a roaring tray. Fine, but you don't need 5. Or we even mentioned many more than 5. Maybe roar means 2. Or says, no, do me the matzah. Matzah, remember, said could be made from 5 different species. Wheat, spelt, rye, oats, right? Ma matzah, meaning arbe, af more, meaning arbe. Okay. Amar Rav Rav Amar Rav Yerokesh Sham Chacham Shram Yosef Ben Chavaz Ben Pesach. All of these 5 different species, Chazeres, Tamcha, Charchivna, you know what? Kulan Israel Baruga Achas. They can all be planted in one row. There's no cloying. They're all considered one species. I'll show you not. Mostly brother, Chazeres for Chazeres Galian. So those 2 Chazeres are not cloying. Ulshin, Ulshe Sada, they're pairs. Creation or creation leaks, creation Sada. Kuzber, Kuzber Sada, Chardal, Mustard, Chardal Mitzri. Masa Mitzri, Ramutza, Einam claims Zebazet. So Chazeres for Chazeres Galin are no climb in. But Chazeres for Ulshin low. But Chazeres and endives would be climb. So the Chite Makula Badodi Ktari Lahu. Maybe all the ones that are missed, you're going to tell me that all the ones that are listed are not considered climb. Amarav, Zugos Tony. It's only the pairs that are one next to each other that are not climb, but the whole group would be climb. So Gemara says, "My Nizram Amarav Nizram Kelchasan." Means we learned in a previous Gemara how you plant. You have to have a square in each corner versus the middle. You have to have distance between the various plantings. That means Enochanami, there is plant, but if you plant it in the way Chazal tell us to plant it, then it's kosher, which is a ruga shishal shisha tvachim. You have a block 6 by 6. Zorim b'toch chamisha zeronim, right? You can plant 5 seeds. Arba laberuchas haruga v'achas bemsa, right? 4 different sides and 1 in the middle. So Mao the same money may be destroyed. So I might think that this is by seeds, but maybe vegetables draw nourishment even more from each other, and you have to plant them farther apart, right? Avabirako slow, Kamash Malon, that we learned our mission to tell us no, as long as you follow the seed protocol, it would work. So are you telling me the Mema Diraka Salima Mizroim? So what? Vegetables have a stronger koach than seeds to draw nourishment, but none. Kolmine zroim, ein zroim barugachas. You can't plant seeds in one row, but kolmine yiroko zroim barugachas, which seems to imply that vegetables have less drawing power. So ma to say mani more means zroim. Because I was equating more with zroim kamash balon. No. So I understand zroim's not the daita. They're not seeds, but non-Yerakos, they're vegetables. The time Barkapor Yerakos, the time of Ishmael Yerakos. So the Chiddush is Chazeret, it's the salad. Because Sagadak oil the soifal actions. Since the romaine lattice, certainly the stalks, are going to get very hard, maybe they'll like seeds, and therefore Nesef Lerevachat Fei, and maybe we have to give them extra space. Because Lav Amar Rav Yosef Rav Chanina Kalashal Kruv, the stalks of cabbage, you got to separate them greatly. We have to treat them like seeds and separate them even more than a seed planting. Then as long as we follow the rules for Zroim, it will work for Yerakos as well. Then the Mishnah says, we could be Yotze both moist and dry.
Can you make kalayim from the same lettuce, different kinds of lettuce? Is that kalayim, or are the same species? If it's one type of lettuce or another,
no, chazeres and other chazeres it's not kalayim, but chazeres and tamcha and charchivna, the 5 types of more that we mentioned, that would be kalayim.
No, but but general, if you plant 2 different kinds of seed, lettuce together, is that kalayim?
We just learned that if you plant chazeres, the chazeres galin, it would not be kalayim.
let's say like apples, if you had two different, a Washington apple and a different kind of apple, a Jonathan apple, would that be, that would be a
No,
Collide.
Lachora, that's the same species.
same species, right? It's just if you do apple and orange or something.
Correct.
Yeah, so I see, okay. That's how they plant, make new grains of apples, for example. They,
We need to wait. Survim Rabbanon. We're going to learn Trumas, Maestris, Orla, and then Kloim, I think, is going to come somewhere else.
okay, well,
I'm not sure why they don't have Kloim there. But it's the same. It's the same species.
right.
Then there's
okay,
no Kloim. It's very interesting. I don't know how many breeds of dogs there are in the world. Maybe 350 or, I mean, if you ever go to a dog, you see that dog show,
Westminster.
the Westminster Dog Show, right? You know that the DNA of every one is exactly the same. There's no difference. They've done analysis of their DNA. They're exactly the same.
Oh,
Exactly the same. It's just these characteristics have been bred into them, but they're exactly the same DNA. So these are phenotypes that are bred extra genetically. So I'm just pointing out that a dog and a dog, that's not Klein. It's exactly the same species. Even a poodle and a Great Dane, exactly the same DNA.
oh.
Now, right? But of course, a dog with a cat would be, and those things, they can't even breed. It means what defines a species usually is the ability to breed within that species. And usually outside of the species, you can't breed them. This is Yotzen ben Lachin ben Yeveshi. Amrav Chizaloy Shonal Bekela. The difference between moist and dry is by the stalks. Then you can be Yotze even if it's dry. Aval Ba'alin, but the leaves Lachin in Yeveshin low. If you're going to use leaves, they have to be moist. If in the Sefer it says with their stalks, Mechlav the Reisha Alin, must be that in the Reisha we're talking about the leaves. Or says no. Perushi Komafarsh. The Mishnah is in the structure of explaining. It means Kik Tani Ben Lachin Ben Yeveshin. When do we say there's no difference between moist and dry? That's only at klach, only on the stalks. But when it comes to the leaves, there would be a difference. So Mace, I'll ask you a stira. It says Yotzin Behen Beklach Shalahen. You could be Yotze in them and in their stalks. Now, what's Behen? Must be leaves, right? Bein Lachin Ben Yeveshin, Dirab Meir. The Chachamim are Lachin Yotzin Ben, Veshin Ein Yotz Ben. The Shavin, they both agreed Yotzin Ben Kemushim. Kemushim is somewhat old. It's not completely fresh, but not dry yet. Avalok vushin, but you can't soak it. The lo shlukin can't overcook it. The lo mavushon. Klol shel davar, kol sheyesh bo tam morer, yotzim bo. If it has a bitter taste, you're yotzim. Kol sheyesh bo tam morer, and yotzim bo. So, how do you? It sounds like yotzim behen of a klach shalan means both the leaves and the cloth. The Gemara says no tirgma cloth. It's only on the stalks, not on the leaves. And by the leaves, the Rameir would also hold that if the leaves are dry, you could not be Yotze with them. The Shulchan Aruch Paskins that if you're going to use the leaves, they have to be moist. But if the stalks, they can be moist or dry. Tarabanan and yotzebem kmushin. Yishum lazram tzargam yotzebem kmushin. The machlok is whether it can be yotze and kmushin. Boy, Rabbi Bar Chama. Marshi yetze adam yechavasu b'mor shomaisu sheni b'Yerushalayim. So you brought up vegetables from Tel Aviv as Meiser Sheni, and you can eat it in Yerushalayim. And you want to know, can you use it for more? So we have this machlokas by matzah. Alibid Rabbi Kiva loti boilach. Rabbi Kiva allowed it by matzah because he says you still can eat it b'chol moshvosechem, because remember we learned that if you're metame Meiser Sheni in Yerushalayim, you can be poide it and then take it anywhere you want. So if it works for a deraisa matzah, hat matzah deraisa nafik, your yotze with matzah deraisa, but more rabbanim boy. So there's no shaila about more. Remember, Rabbi Yossi Aglili said you can't be yotze with meiser sheni because you can't eat it baninus. Do we say the matzah deraisa udeloy nafik? Maybe matzah, we're not yotze because it's deraisa. Aval mored rabbanan nafik. Right? Vegetables, meiser is only rabbinic anyways. And therefore you could, midaraisa, you could take this everywhere and eat it. So maybe, and Rabbi Yossi Agli didn't accept this business of that since you can be metamei you can't eat it b'chol mashavois, but maybe moror, which is only rabbinic, really midaraisa, you could take it anywhere. Maybe you could be yotze with more or dilma. No, because kol tedekina rabbanon. Whenever the chacham made a takana, came the raisa takun. Or Rabbi mistavra matzah more. In fact, Rabbi says moror follows matzah. Hokshu yachad. The chiyechad the matzah yesh aleh Hashem ma'aser sheni. The lo nafik bay. That means according to Rabbi Yossi, you wouldn't be yotze more, would you not be yotze? That's the machlokas between Rab Meir and Rab Yossi Agli Mishnah. Ein shornis amursin latana goyim. Mursin is bran. That means when you take wheat and you put it through a sieve, that which remains on top is the bran. And they used to put water on the bran to give it to chickens. Now the problem is it might become chametz. So you can't soak the bran in water. Aval chultin. But you could you can scald them. And if you pour scalding water over it, so the heat prevents it from being machmitz, then you can feed them. They used to use this bran as like a soap, like as an astringent. They would take it to the bathhouse to scrape on themselves, but they wouldn't do it Pesach because it could become chametz. You could use it dry without water. You shouldn't chew wheat and put it on your wound. Again, any water with flour, with grain can make it chametz. Torah bottom. So if you baked something, it cannot become chametz again. Once you baked it, it can't be chametz. So again, we have to. I guess we'll have to wait for the tsurba. The people who eat gebrachts, right? they don't take it. If you bake matzah already, even if you put it in the soup, it can't become chametz. We just learned in the Gemara. Something that's baked, matzah certainly baked, cannot become chametz. So obviously there is going to be a shita. What the Gebrach's people, what they're worried about, but clear from the Gemara, you cannot make something chametz that which was baked already. V'amavushel, if you cook a dough product, you can't make it chametz again. V'chalut shechalta b'roiskin, or if you poured scalding water over flour, it can't become chametz. Now the Gemara doesn't accept this mavushel business. Ad mavushel le machame. What do you mean? While you're cooking this dough product, it might become chametz, and in fact, warm water speeds that up. So until it's fully cooked, maybe it could become chametz. We're talking about something that was baked, and then you sort of cooked it. That's what we're talking about. Because once you baked it, it can't become chametz anymore. Rashi, if you take something that was baked and you then cook it again, so for example, when you make matzah ball, you take matzah meal. Matzah has been baked already, and then it's ground up in matzah meal, and then you cook it in chicken soup. So that's clearly off with shabishlo, right? Something that was baked that you now cook it. So clearly from the Gemara, it doesn't become chametz. Tanya Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Noam kemach shenafel l'soich delef. Flour. Oh, you have you have a leak. You have a leak from your roof, and it's dripping water, and it's dripping on a dough, on flour. I feel it can't become leavened. The act of the constant dropping will prevent it from becoming chametz. It's got to be constant drop without a stop. If there's a stop, then it can become chametz. Vatika shori. You have some kind of flour-based thing that's made with different types of fluids. It's permitted. It's permitted on Pesach. Vatani vatika sur. There's another says this dish called vatika is prohibited. If it's made with oil and salt, so then oil cannot be machmitzin. Because made peiros ein machmitzin. Fruit juices cannot make a dough chametz. But if it's made with salt and water, then it can become chametz. Don't, what is it? It's like spread some flour on top of a dish. Rashi, Shemavin Tavshil.
A person should not line the edge of a pot with roasted flour.
Even if it's dry, because Dilma loy bashul shapir, it won't cook properly. But we said if it's cooking, but here it may not cook. For us, it can become leavened. Maybe it didn't roast all the way in the oven when you roasted these wheat kernels, and therefore when you cook it in the dish, it'll become chametz. Okay, we'll stop here.
Koyach.